Well, the Golden State Warriors pulled off maybe a surprise win. They were technically underdogs in game one. It's a 7-game series. We got game two just around the corner. Got some Valkyries news. They have their first draft pick ever. And I've got the talented, the charming Sophia Jones joining me for a breakdown, for some additional analysis from the show we did last night to talk about Warriors and Rockets. Game two. Sophia, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Let's go. This is V for Valkyries in the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win.
We are going to win the championship.
Let's go.
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up.
Oh, yeah. Monday, man. Welcome to the Golden Days, the V for Valkyries version of Golden Days. That's what happens every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, at least close to that, when Sophia Jones co-hosts this program with me. You can follow Sophia on social media, more specifically Twitter at Sophia Jones_2. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads and Instagram, at Dog Wild, on Twitter at Surf Journalist. The program on both platforms at Golden Days Pod. Sophia, great to see you. We'll get into the sponsors in just a second, but I first want to check in to see how you're doing and to hear your immediate reaction to a Golden State Warriors team, undersized, but they delivered. They pull off the upset. I feel like the experience factor was huge among many things. Clearly, Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler, but your reaction to the Warriors taking a 1-0 series lead over the Rockets, and great to see you.
Great to see you as well. I'm doing well. And you mentioned just the fact that the Warriors got this first one when there are so many doubts and questions with this team and the roster coming into the playoffs. For them to just secure that first win against the number 2 seeded Rockets is a very positive stat. And especially, I wouldn't say it was necessarily 100% convincing, but at one point they were up by 20 and won this game by 10. So it was pretty comfortable, one could say.
Yeah, and they were leading by 23, actually, and then that lead got whittled down to 3 before Moses Moody hit a key three-pointer with 2 minutes and change remaining. It was a 4-point game at that point, made it a 7-point game, and but that 3 was massive. I think Moses Moody made his only 2 shots of the game in the final 4 or 5 minutes. Clutch buckets. Brandon Pajemski had a clutch tip on a rebound attempt that went the Warriors' way. It was just things went right, and that's the story, generally speaking, but there's a lot to break down in terms of nuance and nitty gritty. I was personally ready to move on from the whole topic of Kuminga getting the DNPs. I know it's newsworthy. It's kind of crazy. I've come to peace with it. And I'm going to present a quote from Steve Kerr, Sophia, that maybe will give, how do I phrase this? Well, maybe make sense of this whole thing, because I found something that perhaps will, for those who really just want some logic and some rationale in their lives, some sort of explanation to make sense of things, because the Kuminga thing doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Outside of Steve Kerr's verbiage saying it's a bad fit, it's perplexing. And I have a quote that I think will help bring some clarity to this whole situation. We're going to play some sound from Jimmy Butler. He talked a lot about the Warriors' rebounding disadvantage. Got a soundbite from Steve Kerr going back and forth with Tim Kawakami. A lot to discuss today. The Golden State Valkyries had their first draft pick ever, but we got to pay some bills, and we don't exist without our sponsors, who we're eternally grateful for. First up is Decades, the band. Sophia, I've never asked you this before. What is your favorite type of music?
R&B.
R&B. Okay, like is there a specific artist? Or
Beyonce.
Artist?
I love Beyonce. I'm going to go see her in LA in like 2 weeks, and I cannot wait.
Really? But I never associated Beyonce with R&B. Like, I always thought she was more like hip hop or like pop. Or is that how the proper classification for Beyonce is R&B?
You know what? She's always described herself as a genre bending artist.
I like that.
And I just love her sound and work ethic and performances, so that's why she's my favorite artist. But in terms of genre, R&B, and some of her R&B songs are like my favorite of all time.
And she has the country album that she's a rock star and a pop star, just a star, no matter how you spin it. Something tells me Decades can play Beyonce songs for your event. That's what they do. They're a cover band. They perform music from Chuck Berry to Katy Perry. Again, wouldn't surprise me if I got a text from one of their bandmates right now saying, yes, we play Beyonce as well. They cover everything from the 50s to today, music for all age groups. They're from Chico. They're locals. They're Northern California natives. They're Golden Dazers. They love the Warriors. They also love the Niners, so much so that they're the official pregame party band for the 49ers. They play all the red zone rallies next door at Great America. They once played a set for Eddie D, Uncle Eddie, the man who oversaw 5 Super Bowls for the San Francisco 49ers before he had to give it up because of a riverboat gambling scandal. Still, that is crazy as well, going back 25 years. But Eddie D literally hired this band Decades for his event in Montana, and you can hire them for your event, whether it's a wedding, a company event, an anniversary, a fundraiser, birthdays, or even a good old-fashioned backyard rager. Decades, the band, is there for you. Reach out to Kyle at atomicmusicgroup.com. Again, Kyle at atomicmusicgroup.com to book them. It's that simple. Or at a bare minimum, just visit the website, decadesofficial.com. Again, decadesofficial.com. They rock and roll. They play. I'm sure they play R&B. I'm sure they play hip hop. They can probably play a lot of music that will satisfy you and your party. Go check them out and thank me later. Today's episode also brought to you by Visit Humboldt, a premier tourist destination, especially if you're here in Northern California, more specifically the Bay Area or Sacramento, wherever, whatever part of the state that you call home. Humboldt's not a far drive. It's literally just up the coast, up the 101. It's a beautiful 3 to 4 hour drive. The last part of it, an hour or so, you're literally driving through an old giant redwood forest with also old giant sequoias. And when you make it to your destination, it's national parks, it's state parks, it's beaches, it's wineries, it's breweries, it's incredible dining, it's hiking trails. You can go by yourself. You can bring the pup. Thank me later on that part of it, especially if your dog loves to hike with you. Take the family, take a romantic partner, whatever the situation, go check out Humboldt and thank me later. It is a whole lot of fun. It's beautiful. And you can use me as a resource as well. Reach out to me on Instagram at DogWild or over on Twitter at Surf Journalist. Send a DM. Ask me what you should do in Humboldt. I once called the place home, was a former student at Cal Poly Humboldt, which was back then called Humboldt State University. And I lived in Arcadia for 2 years. I still go up there at least once a year because I love it, and I can be a resource for you. Visit Humboldt.com as a website. Go check it out. And again, thank me later. And one more time, Sophia Jones joins us, and you could follow her on Twitter at Sophia Jones_2. Sophia, I want to start with a quote that I'm going to actually read to you. And this may or may not make some sense in terms of certain rotational decisions, personnel decisions that we see that we may not be able to make much sense of. And here's the quote. I'm going to read it to you. This is not available as a multimedia element. This attribution was not recorded. It was in print. So all I can do is read to you verbatim what the quote is, and maybe you can make some sense of it. Are you ready, Sophia?
Yes.
So here's what Steve Kerr said recently. Quote, "It's not about anything Kuminga is doing or not doing. It's just about combinations and the way that group has played together, the way Jimmy Butler has filled in since he came here via trade. It's just a math problem more than anything." Unquote. What are your thoughts on that attribution from Steve Kerr?
Yeah, just he's talked about it a little bit throughout the course of the season where it's not about what Kuminga really brings to the team, but he's just openly said that he has struggled to find specific areas where he can fit them in, especially in lineups when it's Draymond, Jimmy, and Kuminga. He said that he struggled to really see how they can fit cohesively on the court together.
Yes, and I'm actually writing again. I brought out I dusted off the old fingertips. I'm typing on the keyboard. You could read my content on Substack. Subscriptions are free. It's dogwild.substack.com is the website, or dogwild is just a simple handle if that's easier for you. And I wrote a whole story about detailing just the different fits, the different net ratings, how what can and can't work. I was trying to rationalize this whole process. And that quote, to me, summed it best. And the reason why I think that quote summed it best is because that quote is not real. That quote is actually not Steve Kerr talking about Jonathan Kuminga. That quote is from last summer talking about Jason Tatum. I'm going to read that quote to you again. Quote, "It's not just about anything Jason is doing or not doing. It's just about combinations and the way that group has played together. The way Kevin Durant has filled in since he came back from his injury. It's just a math problem more than anything." Unquote. And if we hadn't seen this last summer with Jason Tatum, I probably would quit. I'd probably just walk into the ocean. You never see me again, because this is so nonsensical. It's driving me insane. But the fact that we've seen this before, it somewhat miraculously worked. That Serbia game, I'm not going to pretend did not happen, but it did work. They won gold. I don't know if the Warriors can pull it off again with the same formula this time, but this is how Steve Kerr operates. To him, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Jonathan Kuminga all play the same position. It's become a redundancy. We can agree to disagree about whether or not, that redundancy will hurt or help your team, but this is the reality of it. As of right now, I don't think we're going to see Kuminga again. I found peace with that. I feel bad for the kid, but it's going to kill this program to just obsess about it and beat it to like a dead horse. So we're going to move on, but this is just the bottom line. Just Kerr has his view on things, and he thought Jason Tatum, a perennial first-team All-NBA player, a defending world champion, a perennial MVP candidate, was not a good fit. And that's just how he rolls, as crazy as that may sound. Your thoughts on that, Sophia, before we change topics?
Yeah, you essentially flipping the names in the quote and making it true to be to Jason Tatum when Kevin Durant came back. It really does make sense, because that was such a pertinent issue during the Olympics that everyone was talking about. People were even going so far as to assume that Steve Kerr had some type of grudge still against Jason Tatum because he was a part of the Celtics. And the Warriors and Celtics have had their battles. But it, like you said, it ended up working for Team USA. And for Steve Kerr, if it's something where he just needs to stick to a group and it keeps on working, then there's no real need to change.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is how the team is moving forward. Now, I'm trying to read the handle here. A new world is happening, right? What is this infatuation with Kuminga? I wouldn't call it an infatuation, but the reason why it's a talking point as much as it is because this season, Kuminga was third on the team in scoring at 15.3 points per game, sixth in rebounding, 4.6 rebounds per game. He almost hit the 5 rebound mark, fifth in assists, third in blocks. He's third in free throws made. He's second in free throw attempts this season. The point is he has made his contributions. He can impact the game. And to see a player like him suddenly DNP, never mind the fact that this is in year 4 and, he still has not earned a role. That's why it's a talking point, because he is a prominent individual who is getting benched for subjective reasons. It is a story, but we're not going to, again, obsess over it. We're going to move on. And I want to, on the Steve Kerr topic, I want to play this quote real fast because Tim Kawakami last night asked Steve Kerr a question that made Kerr mock him, and maybe he was deserving. I'd love to get your reaction to this, Sophia. But again, Kawakami asked Steve Kerr a question that may or may not have been disrespectful, may or may not have been a Captain Obvious type statement. Steve Kerr seemed to indicate it was. Here is Steve Kerr being asked about the team's size disadvantage.
You guys were as physical as you need to be. Did you prepare them for just time to be as physical as possible? And what did you think about just the physical nature of this
Did
game?
I prepare them
Did
for?
you say this is going to be physical? So
No, I didn't
No.
mention it at all. I totally forgot to tell the team that Houston is really physical and great on the glass. But thanks for the reminder, and I'm gonna mention it
Yeah, you
before
should.
game 2.
you should.
Sophia, your reaction to a fairly lighthearted back and forth there, where Tim Kawakami stated the obvious and Steve Kerr made it known it was obvious. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve Kerr has a great way of interacting with reporters and poking fun at them, but not being too overly aggressive or just kind of negative in general. He just pokes fun at them. And I thought that was a great example. And it honestly is one of the indications that he's at his best. Coach Kerr is best when he's just relaxed, kind of going with the flow. I think even my dad, he would say stories about how when Mike Brown was an assistant coach on the Golden State Warriors, he got into the habit of crossing his legs on the bench because he was so relaxed, because it was a habit that Steve Kerr would do all the time, and Mike Brown had to catch himself sometimes because all of that chillness was just radiating off onto him. So it just really kind of shows the type of coach that Steve Kerr is. He's not going to be uptight.
You know, it's funny you say that because I remember that. I haven't heard anyone bring up Steve Kerr sitting with the legs crossed in a long time, but I also remember that with him wearing a suit. I feel like that was a much more common look when head coaches had to wear suits in the NBA. I don't see Steve Kerr with the legs crossed as much when he's got the tracksuit attire. I feel like he's on his feet a hell of a lot more. I could be wrong on that. Who knows? And I don't know if more comfortable shoes is the reason for that, the more comfortable attire, if it's just a coincidence. Maybe I'm just reading things incorrectly here altogether. But side note, Sophia, do you miss coaches wearing suits? Does that matter to you?
You know, at first I was, I guess, down with the change of coaches turning into being more casual. I think from a coaching standpoint, it's just more comfortable and breathable to do that. But I think when there are so many discussions of the state of the NBA today and what can we do to kind of revamp it a little bit, and people talk about how it used to be, one of those things was the suits. And sometimes when I look back at clips and I see the coaches wearing suits, I'm like, that actually was a good look. And I watch a lot of European basketball as well. All their coaches, the majority of them wear suits as well, even for football, not American football, but football, soccer, they all wear suits as well. So it is kind of a classy look.
It is. I agree. I kind of miss it. I like the look. And football was a little weird. Like I remember Mike Nolan of the American football. Like Mike Nolan of the 49ers used to wear a suit. Tom Landry, I think, was most infamous for it, former Dallas Cowboys head coach. A little more random of a look in coaching, but in the NBA, it used to be a common thing. And then I think the pandemic is where it got phased out, where comfort won out over style. But I do kind of miss it a little bit. By the way, Joshua Dave Labrador in the chat is asking, could Kuminga be traded for the number 1 pick? Wishful thinking. Cooper Flag is going to go to whoever gets that number 1 pick. You'd have to offer like a Victor Wembanyama to get that pick back. Is that accurate to you, Sophia?
Yeah, I think Cooper Flag, he is an extremely valuable prospect right now, and the Warriors would have to give up a lot more than Jonathan Kuminga to get him. Yeah,
you'd have to give up. I don't think there's a chance. And whoever wins that sweepstakes, they are clutching to that number 1 pick, and they will not let it go. You have to pry it off their dead fingers to have a shot at that. Nice idea, though. I respect the thought process there, but it was a little ingenuity, but wishful thinking on your part. Now, Bruce Morrow, I think, is a little more accurate here, where Kuminga could be traded for a Zion Williams or something like that. Whatever. That's a whole other discussion. Let's stay back on track here, though. Warriors take a 1-0 series lead over the Houston Rockets, a team that in the Stephen Curry era has lost every time to the Warriors in the postseason. Something tells me if you're a Rockets fan, you are deflated your soul is crushed. Like you, I don't know, think you have, you don't feel like you have a chance in hell against this. You've been burned so often that, if you're just ready to curl up into the fetal position and find a corner of the room and just lay on the floor there and maybe get some love from your cat coming by, licking you and then scratching you because of how pathetic you are. That's what it feels like to be a Rockets fan when you play the Warriors. I almost pity you, if not for the fact that you are Rockets fans. But there's going to be a game 2 here. And I want to play this soundbite from Jimmy Butler because I think it's interesting and I think it's a little pertinent. And Jimmy Butler, what a game from him. I love this guy. I'll say this. Jimmy Butler makes the Kuminga DNPs a hell of a lot easier to stomach because this guy can play. That trade was awesome. I love everything about him. Even the fact that he's not an elite three-point shooter. Playoff Jimmy can hit three-pointers. Anyways, here is Jimmy Butler. And he was asked about the fact that the Warriors did get crushed rebounding-wise. And that is not, a story of fiction. They got destroyed rebounding-wise. Houston on the night grabbed a total of 52 rebounds to 36 for the Warriors. Even more specifically, in terms of what's glaring, 22-6 advantage on the offensive glass. Houston brings out this 3 center lineup with Jabari Smith Jr., with Steven Adams, and Alperen Şengün. And at times, it caused issues for the Golden State Warriors. Jimmy Butler was asked about it. Let's hear from him. Here is Jimmy Butler. This was immediately following last night's Warriors win, 95-85, over the Rockets in Game 1 in Houston.
You guys held the Rockets 85 points. What did you see from Draymond going up against Adams and going up against Şengün, guys who are better than him? He was still able to hold his own.
Man, I've seen that from Draymond his entire career, for sure, since I've been on the Golden State Warriors. And he's key to the defensive side of what we're doing, but he's also key on the other side of the ball too, because he's so smart in getting people the ball where they need the ball, getting in the right place every single time. And he has the hardest job. He got to go down there and battle with the trees. We let him down 22 times tonight of the guards and the not so tall individuals getting in there cleaning up the rebounds.
Why are those guys so hard to keep off the boards, offensive boards?
I don't know. They're just some oversized human beings that are overly athletic. But we'll go back to the drawing boards, probably do some box-out drills, and come back and not give up 22 offensive rebounds.
Jimmy, you mentioned, they are putting out some huge lineups, double centers. Thompson, a point guard, Jabari, it's small, whatever. They're big. What's it like to tussle with that? You guys are smaller at almost at every position. What is that like physically? What's that like mentally?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're smaller. We're just not as tall. But we got hella fight, and you got to live with that. It is frustrating to not get the ball, but we just got to stay in the fight, box out, have some technique, and stop patting the ball like I be doing and just go grab it with 2 hands. And, buddy, stop trying to dribble the ball. I hate that.
And that's where it ends. It ends with Buddy. Stop dribbling. I thought that was awesome. Jimmy Butler, that was the first time since he's been with the Warriors where he actually sat behind a desk for an interview, a traditional setting. Sophia, your reaction to Jimmy Butler talking about a lot of subjects there, including Draymond Green's importance on defense, the Warriors not being as small as perception may indicate. Height, yes, but not small in terms of bulk. Your reaction to Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, for all of the doubts that a lot of people seem to have had when Jimmy Butler was traded to the Warriors and having him and Draymond Green on the same roster, I think it has been completely just squashed, because when you have 2 players like Draymond and Jimmy that are so high IQ and at the end of the day competitors, they just really fit and mesh really well. And I think that the way that Jimmy talks about Draymond is really a showcase of how highly he regards not only his defense, but also his offense. And you also do like to see a player kind of take a little accountability as well when he says that we need to do a better job of helping Draymond out. I need to stop patting the ball and instead grabbing it. So that self-recognition and accountability is huge to just move forward as well, because the Warriors, they won last game, but the Houston Rockets missed a ton of shots. So they want to, if they still are going to want to have a chance, assuming that some of those shots might fall a little bit more in these next games, they'll have to control the boards a little bit better. So Jimmy touching on that was huge. And then just with the comment on Buddy, he's had, it seems like, a lot of those kind of comments about Buddy, just poking fun at him. I think he mentioned one earlier a couple of shows ago where he asked Buddy to spell connector, and it was a little back and forth just during a media scrum. But it's always nice to see that type of camaraderie as well in and amongst the team.
They have good chemistry. There's no doubt about that. And Buddy Hield, it would be so much nicer if he was making his shots. It makes his minutes a lot easier to stomach. But last night, 1 of 4 from the field, 0 of 2 from deep, 2 points. But going back to Jimmy Butler, I'll read his stat line again because of how fantastic it was. 25 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 steals, which set a Warriors franchise record for most steals ever by a Warriors player in their first playoff game. A random stat that is still awesome. But besides the numbers, I think what is really cool about Jimmy Butler, and I think what stood out to me in game 1 regarding his performance, was the fact that, to me, the equivalent player that the Rockets present for Jimmy Butler is Amen Thompson, a player that in year 2 is emerging, a player that I think at some point in his career is going to turn into a stud, an all-star. I envy the Rockets for having this player, but his inexperience showed in last night's game. And when you compare Jimmy Butler to Amen Thompson finished last night's game with a game worst -16 net rating. Amen Thompson was 0 of 4 from the free throw line for 8 total points. A triple single for Amen Thompson, 8 points, I think 9 rebounds, 6 assists. I thought Jimmy Butler just making Amen Thompson look irrelevant was a massive variable in why the Warriors pulled off that win last night. Your thoughts?
And with such a young and energetic athletic player, when you can kind of get into their head a little bit and just throw them off that, and you take away all of those invaluable assets that they have, it can be extremely detrimental to a team. And I think that's what the Rockets faced, just making, like you mentioned, Thompson just not as nearly as much of a factor. People were hyping him up to be the Steph stopper coming into the series. And so that's where we talked about earlier as well. Some of the inexperience kind of showed a little bit with the Rockets, but you don't want to give them an inch of hope, because with the type of motor that everyone on that Rockets team has, if you give them the smallest bit, they'll take it and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stat that really stuck out, and I wrote about this on my newest story, again, dogwild.substack.com. I'm now writing. I'll try to do it at least once a week. I've just busted out 2 stories in like 3 days. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. But I wrote about this, and I wanted to also follow up and ask you, Sophia, about the fact that going into game 2, I think the stat that the Rockets are going to be absolutely focused on, and Ime Udoka's post-game comments, excuse me, reiterated this as such, where Ime was focused largely on the fact that the Rockets shot just 6 of 29 from deep, which is abysmal. And I think Fred VanVleet is at the forefront of that, 2 of 13 shooting from deep. Jalen Green, the Rockets' leading scorer during the regular season, scoring just 7 points. He was 0 of 4 from deep. So, and Ime Udoka focused on that. He's like, look, we shot 6 of 29 from deep. That's 20.7%. That is awful. They also shot 11 of 20 from the free throw line. You could make a very compelling case that that's an even uglier stat, given you're just standing there with no opposition and you're bricking these things left and right. Houston was 11 for 20 from the free throw line, 9 missed free throws out of 20 attempts. That is a clean 55%. That is a very bad number. I expect those numbers to go up in game 2, among many adjustments that I'm going to personally expect to see. Ime undoubtedly is going to be riding his players in terms of not repeating a performance like that. What do you expect in game 2? Because I do think Houston's going to come back. I have no idea if the Warriors are going to feel complacent and reserve their energy knowing they're going to come home with a split. I don't know if the Warriors are going to go all out again and just try to finish this thing as soon as possible. What do you expect in game 2 of the Warriors and the Rockets? You're muted in case you're talking. Sorry.
Sorry. No, I said I wish I knew what to expect. I definitely would agree with you in that I would be shocked if the Rockets shoot that poorly again from field goal, 3-point, and free throw, especially free throw. I would be shocked if that continued. For the Warriors, I think that one of their biggest adjustments, if you can say, that they would need to make would obviously be the rebounding and just making sure that they don't let the Rockets get as many, for one, second chance opportunities. Because when you can just get one shot and that be it, instead of an offensive rebound where sometimes players are catching it right around the rim and shooting that high percentage field goal shot, if they can limit those, that's definitely a key to success. And just between Steph and Jimmy, they were the main offensive driving forces last game. But you would like to see some other players just kind of not necessarily step up, but make sure that they're still playing into their roles and hitting shots when they need to.
The next time we meet, Sophia, we do this normally every Monday. It's at 3 p.m. Pacific time, unless there's a game. Then we go live immediately following that game. So newsflash, get ready. Monday night, you're joining me. That's when game 4 is. It's going to be Monday. But between now and a week from today, next Monday, what's the date on that? I can't believe we're almost in May. It's still going to be April. It's going to be April 28th. The next time we reconvene will be game 4. And the Warriors have a lot of days off between now and game 4. They get 2 days off between games 1 and 2. They get 2 days off between games 2 and 3, meaning game 3 is not going to be played until Saturday. Game 4 is Monday. Game 5 is Wednesday. Game 6 is Friday. Game 7, if it gets to that, Sunday. What I'm trying to get here my point I'm trying to make here is that in your mind, does the age of the Warriors play into any of this? I don't know if the coaching staff factors that into it, or if their mentality is it's the postseason. I don't care how old you are. I'm going to give you 45 minutes if that's what I feel like you need. Or is there recognition of the fact that Steph's 37, Jimmy and Dre are 35, and if this thing does go to a 6 or 7 game series, that's an advantage for Houston. They're younger, they're bigger. Game's going to slow down. Shots will not fall as easily. And this thing could swing. And I think that's a huge reason why the excitement about the Warriors game 1 win is a little reserved, because this is a 7-game series. Long ass way to go. You're grateful about a game 1 win in Houston, but when you look at the big picture of this and the shorter days as the series goes along, part of me thinks the Warriors should just try and take advantage of every game. Like, I don't think they should take off their foot off the gas for game 2. Take advantage of these extra days and go all out now. Do you think a coaching staff is thinking like that? And in this particular instance, Steve Kerr and his staff, like, do you think they're in recognition of the fact that this series is in the Warriors' advantage if it's short, but it's in Houston's advantage if it goes long? What's your take on that premise?
It definitely has to be on their minds. Just like you said, the longer the series goes, the more it'll favor the Rockets. They're a younger, more physical team, especially the more that they keep showcasing that physicality against the Warriors, the more the Warriors will get run down. So it's definitely in Golden State's best interest to not worry about the long term, but instead of focusing on going all out each and every game and possession, especially for these first 4 games when you have a solid number, when you have that 2-day break in between each game pretty much, which is huge compared to what some other teams are seeing in their series. And when you look at what the next matchup would be if the Warriors do win this series and move on, it will either be the Timberwolves or the Lakers. which the Timberwolves, they snatched away game 1 on the Lakers' home court, but Los Angeles is for sure not going to go away easy. So I can anticipate that series running a little long and being pretty back and forth as well. So if you can let them tire themselves as much as possible and be fresh yourself, I think that's the route that the Warriors are going to want to go.
The real Elise in the chat, who's I love his contributions. He was on the live program last night as one of a handful of audience members who always brings excellent new perspectives to the table. Is asking, did you sub to the channel? Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I'm gonna do for you right now. I'm gonna actually show your channel to everyone, just because again he kills it every time he comes on with me. I love this guy. Here is the real Elise. This is his YouTube channel. The handle is at the real Elise, and here's the subscribe button. I am now subscribed, so I hope that answers your question for you. Hope you're happy. And thank you, as always, for the fantastic contributions and for the positivity. You're just a good dude. All right, so that happened, and we move on. And speaking of by the way, the postseason in general, this is my favorite time of year. These next 2 months, easily, from a sports and probably just in general in life perspective, this is my favorite time of year. I cannot get enough of meaningful, competitive, all-out basketball like we're going to get almost every day. And not just that, but you get the NBA on TNT crew analyzing this stuff almost every day. Say what you will about Barkley. It's a shtick, first of all. I want that to be very clear. He does not organically, genuinely hate the Warriors. He clearly had a feeling about him. Keep in mind, and this is a very important aspect of the whole Barkley shtick. It's important to note. When he played in his career with the Philadelphia 76ers, then with the Phoenix Suns, and then he finished with the Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors, at no point in that run of his career were they relevant. Did they matter? And yes, I know the Warriors played Chuck's Phoenix Suns in the first round of the playoffs. This was back when the first round was a 5-game series, and this was when the Warriors had Chris Webber for that 1 year as a rookie, and we all were actually excited for once in our lives, and we actually had something to look forward to until Charles Barkley swept in that series, and then Chris Webber left right after that, and it was just a bubble that popped, and that's that. The point is, Charles Barkley, when he sees the Warriors, my guess is he's thinking of the Warriors of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, a Warriors team that from an organizational perspective is very relatable to today's Washington Wizards, right? I'm guessing, Sophia, is that the bottom? Is that the cellar dweller? Is that the bottom feeder of the NBA today? Would you say it's the Washington Wizards? Is there a team that has a lower reputation than they do?
I would say it was probably a toss-up between the Wizards and the Hornets right now.
All right. And so back then, for 30 years, and I remember almost all of it. I don't like the fact that I remember almost all of it, but I do. For 30 years, the Warriors and the Clippers were the Wizards and the Hornets. And so Charles Barkley, for his entire life, pretty much, outside of whatever he remembers in the 70s, because Rick Barry's Warriors were a thing, and then after that began the 30 years, maybe closer to 40 years of darkness. So Barkley, something tells me Barkley remembers that. And he's having a very hard time, even to this day. I think he's accepting it easier now than he did 10 years ago. But I think he has a hard time accepting the fact that a team that in his day was the Washington Wizards of today is suddenly a dynasty, is suddenly the kings of the NBA. I think he had a hard time stomaching that. And I think early on, the riffs and the jokes were playing off what he remembers for the Warriors. It doesn't help that the Warriors brand is shooting, which has never worked on a championship level until the Warriors, right? And what I mean by that is no team in the NBA has ever succeeded with shooting being the primary scoring focus, right? Normally, you had to have size. You had to have an inside game. You had to have somebody to get you those easy buckets and clutch moments. Deep shots normally don't fall deep in the postseason because players are tired, because pressure's high, because refs are officiating far less closely than they do in the regular season. Fouls are not called as easily. So typically to win a title, you'd have to be this traditional team that has size, that feeds the ball inside, that has an inside-out game, that has great shot blocking, great rebounding. And then the Warriors come and they win not just a championship, but start a dynasty with finesse, right? And it works because of Stephen Curry. It's not complicated. And Klay Thompson obviously helps too. He helped for all 4 of those championships. My point is, I think that's the root of the Charles Barkley disdain for the Warriors. With all that said, I don't think it's genuine. I think it's a shtick. And ultimately, this is just my favorite time of year. We see him and that crew almost every night. Every one of these games matter. It makes this is a hell of a lot better when the Warriors are involved. Like last year was not as fun. I'm not plain and simple. The Warriors lost in the play into the Kings. They were out. This was not as entertaining. This is a hell of a lot better this year. Point is, I'm happy right now because this is a great time of year for sports. How do you feel about the NBA postseason? Do you get as giddy as I do, or are you a little more sane and normal than me? Your thoughts?
No, I love the NBA postseason. Growing up in Miami, even on the East Coast, I would have my dad, he would tell me, oh, you don't need to worry about school, when I would want to stay up and watch the 10 p.m. tip West Coast primetime game for the playoffs. So, no, this time of year, growing up, like I said, in Miami, always sleep schedule was the worst, but in California, I love it. There are so many competitive games just like every single day, starting at 4. And it's just such a special time of year for sure.
It is. It's so special. I'm giddy about all of it. Nathan J. Shaw dropping $10 as a donation, writing that he will admit this. He feels still that Steve Kerr is a great coach overall. Agreed. That has never been an issue of mine with Kerr either. Even so, no minutes for Kuminga is downright wrong. He could be the cornerstone of the next generation of Warriors. DNPs are unacceptable. Agreed. You and I are on the same page in terms of the sentiment. If it makes you feel any better, Nathan J. Shaw, because it makes me feel better knowing this, Joe Lacob's not happy about this, all right? Mike Dunleavy Jr., before the series started, the GM of the Warriors, publicly said, he was asked by Mark Medina in a great interview, by the way. I retweeted that as well and reposted it on Threads if you want to read it. Mark Medina did an interview with Mike Dunleavy Jr. before this series started and asked that question. It was right off the top of the bat at the very start of the story. And Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s response was, "You're going to see him." He was just giving flowers to the kid. He was raving about him, just basically saying all the same things we've heard from the front office about Kuminga, and then said, "We expect to see him in this series." So the front office loves this kid. I still have no idea how this is all going to play out in the offseason. It seems like it could go one of 3 ways. If the Warriors are bounced early, Steve Kerr might be on the hot seat, especially if he's DNPing Kuminga. The Warriors can make a massively deep run, hell, even win the whole thing, and I'm suddenly putting on a Steve Kerr tattoo. And again, he's forever in my good graces at that point. He will have earned that for me. I want Stephen Curry with 5 rings for someone to earn that level of a trust. Not there yet, but it's possible. And this year is vitally important, again, because of the landscape. You don't get many opportunities like this where a path has been laid out for you that's plausible, that's realistic. So if they make a deep run and everything goes well, Kerr and Kuminga could both stay. I could see that being possible. Or the third scenario is, who knows what happens? Kerr stays, Kuminga's traded. And the trade could be in a sign-and trade. I can't imagine they just let him go for nothing. He will be a restricted free agent this offseason. I don't know if the CBA would allow the Warriors to sign and trade him. I'm going to guess yes, but I don't know for certain. Anyways, those are the 3 scenarios I could see happening, and I'm not breaking news saying that. But if it's any consolation for you, I agree. Steve Kerr's a brilliant coach. It's just the personnel stuff that leaves a lot to be desired. But the front office feels you as well. Sophia, any additional thoughts that you have about this topic?
Yeah, just there's no telling what could happen with Jonathan Kuminga's future on the Warriors, but I think realistically you just gotta hope that the Warriors can get something in return for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like my perspective is always looking ahead as much as staying in the present. And that's what the front office is trying to do here. This is the whole premise behind the 2 timeline thing is we don't want to become what the Lakers were when Kobe Bryant was playing his final years and all those years after Kobe when he retired. Like the Lakers were a bad team for a long time until they traded for LeBron James. And Joe Lacob has publicly stated, I don't want to see my team go through something like that. And that's where a player like Kuminga is especially valuable. And this is you could also throw in Podziemski, Moody, Quentin Post. I love Guy Santos. I love all these guys. Who knows if Trace Jackson Davis may earn a role again someday. But from my perspective, like I like to see the future as much as the present. And Kerr is just focused on the now. And look, that's healthier. I'm guessing he's a happier person than me because of that mentality. That's the whole Taoist philosophy. Maybe it's Buddhist as well. I'm not familiar with Buddhism, but yeah, just being in the present, right? Like just not thinking about the future, which could add worry, not thinking about the past, which could depress you. He is just in the moment, and that is healthy. But I also feel you, Nathan J. Shaw, that it's just crazy. It is crazy that he's just getting DNP'd all of a sudden. David Sassy in the chat writes, it's Arcata, not Arcadia. I never said Arcadia. I said Arcata. I lived there for 2 years. I know very well. David Sassy is referring to the town in Humboldt County where Humboldt State University, now known as Cal Poly Humboldt, exists. And if I sounded like I said Arcadia, that was not the intention. I know full well it's called Arcata. It's but you don't say the T like a T. You pronounce it like a D. It's Arcata. Have you ever been up there, Sophia? It's beautiful.
I haven't, but it sounds gorgeous every single time I watch the just the visual on the website. Yeah.
And again, check out Visit Humboldt. We're so stoked that they're a sponsor. And if the folks from HLA Humboldt Leisure Association are watching right now, I promise I'm getting back to your email. I just saw it. Anyways, so Shaw, I get what you're saying in that regard as well too. It's just we'll see what happens. But right now the Warriors are in the postseason. They're up 1-0 on the Rockets. And it's a wild ride. I don't know how else to spin it. I was going to touch on this a moment ago, and now it's a full circle thing. Unfortunately, it took like 20 minutes to get there. The rest of the postseason, right? It's not just the Warriors and Rockets playing. I think the most entertaining of the other 7 series right now is Nuggets Clippers. That was a hell of a game 1. Whoever comes out of that is going to be battered and bruised. And maybe the best part about it is the Warriors don't have to worry about it. The Warriors, if they get out of the series, their next opponent's going to either be a Lakers team that has a lot of flaws or a Minnesota Timberwolves team that they beat 3 out of 4 times this year. So they've got the easier path. But the other games are crazy. Like, I think the Nuggets, Clippers, insanity. I'm just thrilled watching every minute of that. I'm definitely going to be tuning in. I think Lakers and T-Wolves play tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's either today or tomorrow, but that game 2, that's going to be some riveting stuff, Sophia, because LA doesn't want to fall 0-2. What is your takeaway from this postseason so far? Because it's fantastic. And I know that's a line that I stole from the NBA.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, yesterday it was, besides the Warriors-Rockets game, it was pretty much just a whole bunch of blowouts. But the Western Conference, I mean, I can't even say that after the Thunder just blew out the Grizzlies, but just a lot of these games and series, even if some of them started out as blowouts, I cannot see that continuing. And this is a really exciting postseason for sure.
Oh, yeah. At least in the West. I think the East is kind of like giving you what you expect for the first round. Like, Cleveland, Miami is not going to be riveting. Boston, Orlando was entertaining for, I think, a half. And then hopefully Jason Tatum's wrist is okay. I do not want to see Boston get denied of a repeat because of injuries. I want to see them get beat if they're not going to get it. But the Eastern Conference first round is kind of like meh. Does anything in the East even captivate you? I guess Indiana, Milwaukee can be entertaining. I don't know if Dame Lillard's going to come back. He's apparently been cleared. I don't know if that's going to make a difference. That Pacers team is deep, long, just I think better top to bottom than Milwaukee. I could be wrong on that, but and then the Knicks and the Pistons is a little entertaining. But the East is just it's such a G League compared to the West. It's crazy to me. I don't know why the East has just fallen this badly in terms of a one-sided affair with the West. Man, it is very black and white in terms of the West just being superior, better, deep, and then the East you could almost call an extension of the G League if you take Cleveland and Boston out of the equation, and I guess the Knicks, in some respect there as well. But wait, what's your take on the East? Like, why is it so bad? You grew up in Miami and you watched the Heat growing up. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, the Eastern Conference, I couldn't even tell you. And I know we talked a little bit about Cooper Flag earlier in the show. It makes me think that Adam Silver better hope he goes to a team in the Eastern Conference to have a little bit more parity in and amongst the league. But it makes me think about the WNBA and how and how they don't have any conferences. It's just one big pool. And sometimes I wonder if the NBA wouldn't benefit from doing something like that.
Cuz 1998 writes that Kuminga would be playing if Steph and Dre wanted him to play. That's an assumption. There is no evidence of any kind that indicates that Steph and Dre ever campaign for other players to their head coach. Usually there's a clear line in terms of roles and jobs. And if players were suddenly going to Kerr saying, hey, I think you should play him more, I think you should play less, that could be not only a disrespectful approach, but it could also be a sign that they don't respect their coach, and they do. Like Steph and Dre do respect Steve Kerr. So look, that's an assumption. You could think that, but there's no way to prove that without them actually admitting it or a report indicating it. And Sophia, you played D1 basketball. I didn't play at that level, but I played a long time. And if there's one thing I never experienced, it's players calling out coaches in terms of who to play when. Like there is always like a respect level. There were boundaries in place. When it comes to minutes and distribution and who plays, that's a coach's job. And I never saw a player speak out against something like that. Did you ever experience that as a D1 player?
No, I can't say that I did. Like you mentioned, there are certain boundaries and a level of respect that players have towards their coach, and then just a general understanding that my job is doing whatever I need to do on the court. And the coach's job is to figure out how best to use all these pieces in every single way. So, yeah, I haven't really seen that level of calling out, I guess you could say.
Yeah, neither have I. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I've never seen any evidence that indicates that Steph and Dre would be approaching their coach and asking, why aren't you playing this guy? Or it's just two different jobs, man. They are busy with their own lives. You could tell it gets a little uncomfortable when people ask them about it, especially like you could tell they're not a big fan. Like Steph was asked a second time about it recently, and you could tell he just was like, look, he just seems to be ready. And if, he brought up actually the Jason Tatum thing. That was the first time I saw that, and it gave the genesis for me thinking there could be something there in terms of Steve Kerr and just how he views positions and certain individuals. Like, I hope it's not a personal thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And there's at least evidence to indicate it's not a personal attack on Kuminga. This is just Steve Kerr seeing certain players and the positions he thinks they fit, and he values spacing tremendously. And so he values players who brings it, and he doesn't like players who don't. He doesn't seem to acknowledge vertical spacing, which is a part of the NBA. And I wish there was some more recognition of that aspect of spacing, but it's just how it is. What are you going to do? Any final thoughts about the postseason before we shift gears and talk about the Valkyries, because they made their first draft pick last week, and we got to talk about that. But any final NBA Warriors thoughts from you, Sophia?
Yeah, I'm extremely optimistic that the Warriors won this first game. I think that the Rockets are 100% going to respond, and it's not just going to be a walk in the park for Golden State, but just the fact that they got over this initial hump, I think is a very positive sign.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly agreed. And Jay Capina, I saved this chat post for now. He writes, hello, Cyrus and Sophia. When the subject gets to the WNBA, we're here. Can Sophia tell us about, is it Jocity? How do you pronounce that? I'm sorry.
So it's Yochite.
Yochite?
Yes.
Oh, people are going to have fun with that one.
It's Lithuanian, so it's a little different.
People are going to have fun with that name. Yochite.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to take some practice. I'm going to hear it from other broadcasters as well. But Yochite, she's from Lithuania. First things first, did you expect that pick? I heard the broadcasters say they were a little surprised by that. What was your immediate reaction when the Valkyries, with the 5th pick in the 2025 WNBA draft, selected Jocite from Lithuania, an international player?
I was surprised. I thought that, and my prediction was that the Valkyries were going to pick Anissa Morrow, who I believe was the 7th overall pick. But Yoshite, she's only 19 years old. She's from Lithuania. The Valkyries, they have a ton of international players already on the roster, so it makes
Noticed
sense
that.
for them
Yep.
to bring in another just international experience. And Yoshite is just kind of someone, she's gone through a lot of the professional basketball already, playing overseas, so she's a ready now scorer mostly. And again, she's 19, so she has a ton of upside and can really be brought up through the Valkyries organization.
So Bruce Morrow is saying she was on WNBA Junior. I don't know what that means. Is that like another league in Europe that is considered to be a developmental league, or what do you think he's insinuating with that?
I believe just kind of the way that the NBA has some of their global academies is just kind of just a different form of an exposure camp, I believe.
Gotcha.
So and the general manager for the Valkyries, Ohama Nyanin, she's worked a lot with USA Basketball, so it makes sense that she has a lot of international experience and knowledge of these players.
What are your thoughts on her?
I like her. I mean, like I said, I think the fact that she's only 19 years old, she kind of has already proven herself at the professional level as opposed to some of college players per se that would just be stepping into the WNBA. I love that she's only 19, so she's extremely young, has a lot of upside. And just when you're thinking about bringing or building an organization from the ground up, having players that are super amenable is really important, and instilling the mindset that you want them to potentially grow with the organization. And I think that Yoshite can fit into that.
And what about the other draft picks? Because they had what, 3, right?
Yes,
Enlighten me, please.
so they picked Cheyenne Sellers, a point guard from Maryland, at the 17th overall pick, and Caitlin Chen from UConn at the 30th overall pick. So it was very hard, guard heavy draft for the Valkyries, which the head coach, Nali Nakase, she has said about how much she really just wants to play fast. So having kind of quick, agile guards definitely plays into that. But with a player kind of like Cheyenne Sellers at Maryland, she had a great NCAA tournament run. She's a point guard. She can score. She's very good size for a point guard as well, and just brings a lot of skill. As well as Caitlin Chen from UConn. She previously was a grad transfer from Princeton. So when you talk about IQ and just kind of gritty, efficient players, Caitlin Chen is definitely an embodiment of that. I think that pretty much all the picks that the Valkyries chose will be a good fit for the team. But again, just with the state of the WNBA, unfortunately, one thing that happens is just because you get drafted doesn't necessarily mean that you make the roster. So these players will still have to undergo training camp and take all those steps as well, and hopefully make the final cut.
Yeah, and Bruce Morrow, who has a lot of takes on the WNBA, says Caitlin Chen will not make the roster. Are you as confident of that, Sophia, as Bruce Morrow is?
She is someone that I mentioned kind of her grittiness. I mean, she just is coming off of winning the national championship with UConn, so she has that experience in playing at a high level. Graduated from Princeton, so she obviously has the IQ there as well as an Ivy League player. She is someone that if she can just really potentially learn maybe from some of the other more veteran guards like a Tiffany Hayes, I think that she could wiggle her way onto the roster 100%. One of the things that stood out to me the most when watching Caitlin Chen throughout her college career, but specifically in the championship run, was just having the ability to do what needed to be done at any given time and be just such a team unselfless player. And when, again, I mentioned an expansion team, there's really no set way really yet just having someone that's willing to buy in and have that mindset that they're going to come in with a chip on their shoulder and do whatever needs to be done, that's ultimately how I think they could potentially make the roster.
Good stuff. Good information. I want to real fast go back to a second. I'm sorry to bring this subject up, but I literally just did a ton of research on this, and I have the link back again on the visual side. If you're watching on YouTube for the Substack, it's up and running. Dogwild.substack.com. Dogwild, the same as my handle on Instagram and Threads. The reason why I use that, besides the fact that I go wild for dogs, I have a published book from like 15 years ago, Another Life, that had that in the title. But regardless, I bring this up because in the chat, because 1998, he brings up an interesting point here, which is that Draymond is not a shy person. Draymond called out Kerr for the Jason Tatum thing. Draymond was emphatic about the fact that Jason Tatum should have played, and he pushed back very hard on his coach for that decision. So you make a good point, Cuz, in the sense that if Draymond Green wanted Kuminga to play, he probably would speak up. But here's the part. Here's why I don't know. I don't know if like him not saying anything on his show means anything. Besides the fact that, you'd be ruffling some feathers and, you're literally contradicting your coach in the middle of the postseason run. I don't know if those are the type of things you want to do. But this is a section from a story I published just the other day. And I want to read it to you. And again, if you go to Substack, I'm now writing about the Warriors. I'm hopefully it's entertaining and informative stuff. But the Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga relationship is important to note, because when Kuminga unexpectedly fell to the number 7 pick back in the 2021 draft, I'm going to read this verbatim because to me, if you're going to be a good writer, it has to sound good, enunciated like a speech. So I'll read this verbatim to you. It was Draymond Green who called Bob Myers and requested the team draft the promising young player. Green became aware of Kuminga by his former Warriors teammate, Jared Jack. In case you folks forgot about Jared Jack, he was on that 2013 team that upset the Nuggets in the first round and pushed San Antonio, who ended up winning the championship that year, to 6 games in the second round. That was the Warriors coming out party from my perspective in terms of the dynasty as a whole. And Jared Jack was very influential on that team. He played a huge role. And Jared Jack, in the final year of his contract, just final year of his playing career, he was on the same G League Ignite team that Jonathan Kuminga was on as a 17-year-old. And Jared Jack loved this kid. And Jared Jack and Draymond Green have a close relationship. And Jared Jack is the one that told Draymond Green, call Bob Myers, tell him to draft this kid. You need to snag him. Side note, Kuminga, in that deep-ass 2021 draft, was projected by some to be the number 1 pick. So when he fell to 7, it was surprising, and the Warriors pounced on it. Now, when Draymond, fast forward a few years, when Draymond Green signed his most recent contract extension, right? This was another 4-year, $100 million contract that was agreed upon in summer 2023. And this keeps Draymond with Steph and with Jimmy Butler. All their deals are going to end at the same time in 2027. But Joe Lacob levied onto Green a contingency as part of that new deal. And this is a quote from Draymond Green himself. Draymond said that Joe told him, quote, I know you're going to play and lead and all of that, but I need one more thing. Lacob said, I need you to take JK under your wing. Draymond Green responded, quote, you got my word. To me, that was a condition of the contract. And that mentorship extended to just this season. People forget that just 3 months ago, Kuminga was starting over Draymond Green because we thought that transition was taking place of the reins being handed to Kuminga. And Kuminga had that month of December where he finally, for the first time in his career, in a sample size of a month, averaged 30+ minutes. And he delivered in that month of December. He averaged 21.3 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. He shot 47.9% from the field, 37% from deep, which is a good number. And then the injury really derailed everything. And that, to me, I think is a huge reason why he's not playing. My point is, Draymond loves this kid. He vouches for him. He's publicly said so. My guess would be that Draymond finds himself in a somewhat difficult position where I don't think he thinks it would be wise to publicly take a side in this. I just don't think that's good for the team, because all you're doing is adding a disruption. All you're doing is escalating an issue that they're trying to not make an issue. And I think that's why you're not hearing from Draymond about Kuminga on the podcast. Sophia, your thoughts?
No, that makes 100% sense. I wasn't aware that he, I guess, kind of signed his contract as an agreement to take Jonathan Kuminga under his wing. But you did bring up the fact that he willingly gave up some of his minutes so that Kuminga could play. And so that type of relationship, I 100% think is a large reason why he probably doesn't speak out on it, just because it would, especially in the playoffs when you're trying to make a run, you want everything to be just as smooth as possible internally and in the locker room and not ruffle any feathers. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense that Draymond, but he potentially could be behind the scenes fighting for Kuminga, but I don't think he would do it openly in public.
No. And true that my guess is this is all very complicated, just like how human beings are very complicated. And in the same way that, you know, some folks, especially Celtics fans, probably were screaming at the top of their lungs to other players on that team who was playing for Kerr. They probably were yelling, why isn't Derek White saying something? Why isn't Drew Holiday saying something about Jason Tatum getting DNPs? And again, the structure, the hierarchy of a locker room, it's complicated. The head coach is the boss. If you start speaking out against them, like, that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways, not always as a positive. And at this point in time, the coach made his decision, and I just think everyone else is falling in line, and hopefully it'll work out. You know, that's it. I think everyone's hoping for the best here. LR, by the way, has a hot take that Kuminga is going to play in game 2. Pin this comment. LR, your voice was heard. I don't agree with you, but if you're right, great. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. All it would take is Kuminga just playing one game, and especially playing well. If he came back and played awful, that's just throwing fuel on this thing. And maybe that's another reason why Kerr's not going to play him. But if Kuminga does get minutes and he actually delivers and he's suddenly back in the rotation, we're all going to forget about this in like a second. Like, this will all be ancient history, but it's happening in the now. And so, you know, here we are still talking about it, even though it's become a somewhat tired topic. Any final subjects you want to discuss on the WNBA before we wrap it up? We'll wrap everything up.
Yeah, you know what? Training camps and preseason workouts are kind of underway for the WNBA. The season is right around the corner. The Valkyries have their first preseason game on May 6th already. So it's a very interesting time, not just because of the NBA postseason, but because WNBA is ramping up as well.
Oh, that is awesome. And again, we're the moment that NBA season ends, will obviously be your go-to for everything Golden State Warriors this offseason, but we're also going to be covering the Valkyries, and we're elated to do so. Sophia, what do you say to the haters who, because there are haters out there. That's just a part of life, and the internet and social media accentuates them, amplifies their voices, unfortunately. So there are some haters out there, and I'd love to know what your response to this is so that I can respond with this as well. Some haters out there say, well, the WNBA is not making money, and they cite this stat that I think showed they lost like 40-50 million last year. I have no idea what's real in all this, but what is your take on the WNBA's finances? Like, are they losing money? If yes, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I can't speak to the WNBA's finances either. I do know that the players are negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement. The WNBA has signed a lot of new upcoming TV deals that are pretty lucrative for the upcoming seasons as well. They're getting more fan attendance and people watching the games. So the ratings are increasing for the WNBA, which at the end of the day will translate to making money at some point.
Yeah, no, wholeheartedly agree. And Armando Laura in the chat, who is, I think, as well versed as anyone on this subject, because Armando Laura is a professor of sociology at the University of California, Berkeley. And so he literally studies the art of human bullshit. And that's not a fancy way of saying it. In reality, he studies why and how people do the things they do. And he brings up the fact that Valkyries tickets are selling at 2 to 3 times face value right now. The team has no stars. The team hasn't played a game yet. That's Bay Area money for you. I'm looking at the bigger structure of things, though. Because again, there are reports out there that say the WNBA is not making a profit. And during the draft, I learned that a lot of WNBA players have set up their contracts so that they're going to expire next year. I think something like of the 140, and don't quote me on these numbers, these are ballparks, but like of 140 WNBA players, like something like 119 of them are going to be free agents next year. And they set this up by design so that they can opt out of the current deal and get a new one. But what is their leverage if the league's not making money? I guess that's the point. And that's where the haters come in. And that's where I'm very curious to know what your response would be to an argument like that.
Yeah, and I've talked about kind of the collective bargaining agreement that the WNBA Players Association is trying to sign and get into effect next season. And essentially what that is asking for is that the players get a larger percentage of the total revenue and sales. So it's not necessarily they're asking, or there's one video specifically that Kelsey Plum, she was a player for Las Vegas Aces, traded to Sparks, and is going to play for them next year. But there's a video of her talking about how she understands that she's not going to get paid like LeBron, but they're just asking to get a similar percentage of total sales. So that's kind of what I guess I would have to say to the haters. It's not that they're expecting to get paid a ton of money like the NBA. There is a certain expectation of having to be realistic. It's just that larger percent of revenue.
And Randy Ballin in the chat is saying, doesn't the NBA underwrite the WNBA? I think the NBA owns the WNBA. So yeah, it's all one entity. It's all one property. And then the figures that I'm citing that I repeat from other people, I think is strictly like the WNBA's base. But at the same time, he makes a good point. I mean, this is an NBA product. The NBA is doing fine financially. They're greedy, in my opinion. If anything else, they've got plenty of money. And the reason why I call them greedy is because we don't have 4 more expansion teams that I think belong. When you look at the depth of the NBA, when you look at the fact that every team is most teams, not every, but a large percentage of teams are actually really good. This is the time. And if you want to grow your game, add more cities. You don't think adding 4 more cities and all the marketing and the fans and everything, that's not going to grow the game? But the biggest reason why you don't see expansion still, why Adam Silver is still making excuses for Seattle and Vegas not having a franchise, is because that means the 30 teams that are currently in existence would have to split their revenue share, not between 30 teams, but between 32 or 34. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what is that? Like 10 million, 20 million, 40 million? Have you ever met a billionaire before? They care about $100. Okay. Like most of them are very frugal. They penny pinch. So if you're going to a billionaire saying, do you mind giving up 10, 20 million a year so that big picture we can grow this game? Most of these billionaires, especially the ones in markets like Indiana, like Denver, they're looking at you going, no, I want my 10, 20 million. F those expansion teams, F growing the game. And those small market teams are holding the NBA hostage. It drives me insane, but that's the reality of things. So that's the NBA. The WNBA, meanwhile, like you mentioned, they're going to have a new deal after the season. Side note, when I saw that, I forgot her name, and please forgive me for this, but the French woman who was drafted number 2 in the draft, 6'6", we talked about her a lot last week. Seattle got her in the draft, is that correct? But they got her through a trade. Like who owned that pick originally? And is there regret just coursing through those veins? Because something tells me she's going to be a star in this game.
So the trade that was made a couple months ago that sent Drew Lloyd of the Seattle Storm to the Las Vegas Aces, and then Kelsey Plum of the Aces to the Los Angeles Sparks, which then sent the Sparks number 2 pick to the Seattle Storm. There potentially could be a little bit of regret there when looking at it, but when you also think about you're getting a player like Kelsey Plum, who is incredible, you can't feel too bad.
Is she that good? Is Kelsey Plum still that good that makes you think, who cares about the number 2 pick? Who cares about a 6'6" athlete who's just going to destroy this league in a year or two? Like, is she that good? Sorry to put you
I
on the
love
spot.
watching
I'm
her
curious.
play.
Uh-huh.
But the player that you mentioned, Dominique Malonga,
Yes, Malonga. Thank you.
the French player, there have been comparisons to her being like the WNBA's Victor Wembanyama, but she is 100% incredible. And I could see, I would also say as well, when this trade happened a couple months ago, Dominique's draft stock has not risen to the point that we saw at the draft. So kind of more projections that were at the beginning of the year, they actually had the Valkyries selecting her at around the 5th pick. So there wasn't really much knowledge of this player. So that's why they kind of went through with this trade. But there might be a little bit of resentment potentially.
And that's a good point too, because you're right. Malonga, is that her name? Her last name? You're right. I saw the same mock draft that had her falling to 5th. And I feel like her stock has just skyrocketed over the last month or two. So you're right. In hindsight's always 50-50, right? It's or 20-20, whatever the adage is, where it's easy to look back and point out mistakes that at the moment are impossible to see. So, but nonetheless, Seattle, congratulations. You might have gone yourself like a superstar big. And I don't know if she can shoot threes. You mentioned a comp to Victor Wembanyama, so that indicates that she can shoot threes, but she's going to be a force. I mean, if Paige Beckers didn't exist, she would be the number 1 pick, I think, for take that for what it's worth. But anyways, and we wrap it up here. AC real quick in the chat saying that Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green always play horrible versus the Warriors. You must have forgotten the 2019 NBA Finals, but that's okay. I don't think Fred VanVleet is going to follow up a 2 for 13 performance shooting from 3 with another game like that. We shall see what happens. Any final predictions? What do you think is going to happen in game 2? Who wins?
Predictions? I could honestly see the Warriors returning to Chase Center up 2-0. I could honestly see that.
I could see that too.
Yeah.
I absolutely could. Absolutely. What the only piece of advice I would give is, let me see if the line is available. This is courtesy of BetOnline, official sponsor. Stoked to have them back. So courtesy of BetOnline, in terms of who's favored in game 2 between the Warriors and the Rockets, the line right now is Houston -3. I would advise to stay the F away from that. I would not bet that. I have no clue what's going to happen, because you're right. Maybe the Warriors take this game very seriously, fully aware that if this series drags out, that's not in their favor. Maybe Houston comes back with a vengeance, and all of a sudden we have a tied series. We shall see. Damian LaRoche, a Golden Dazer, say I could also see Kerr's lineups blowing up in his face with Houston hitting a few more threes and free throws. Yeah, those numbers were atrocious in that game. AC following up saying, at least statistically, Fred VanVleet, the last 7 games versus the Warriors is a high score of 13 points. Look, I hope he continues that. I'm just not going to pretend that Fred VanVleet is just going to continue having bad games. I will not make that assumption. But if he does, great news. Yeah, more power to you. Anything else? Are we done? Any final thoughts or notes that anything we missed? No more paid chats. I think we're good there. Yeah, Sophia, any final thoughts as we go?
Yeah, I think just hope that the Warriors are resting up and ready to win this game too.
Beautiful. Yeah, same. And we'll be back at the absolute latest Wednesday night. Larry Kruger and I are going to be doing post game, maybe with the whole panel. We shall see. And then Rick Barry is going to join the program Thursday. I never heard back from Gary St. Jean. I was hoping to get him on the show, but he went MIA on me. I hope he's doing okay. And if I hear back, great, then we'll get him on the show as well. But if the Warriors make a deep postseason run, you're going to see some big names coming on this program. I'm excited for that in terms of guests. That's one of the perks of covering a team who makes a deep postseason run. Suddenly, everybody wants to be on your show if they go deep. So it'll be mutually beneficial. In terms of what happens. Damian LaRoche, by the way, is saying, I don't want you to get a Steve Kerr tattoo. I do. I honest to God, there will be so much peace of mind from my perspective, so much relief, like the exhale that will come out if Stephen Curry wins a 5th championship. You would probably smell that rank miles away. Point is, sorry for the bad imagery there. Point is, I want it. I want a Steve Kerr tattoo. I want to, if Kuminga doesn't play the rest of this postseason, I want to be wrong on my analysis of the Warriors needing him. I want all of that. I just want a 5th championship, man. I'm greedy. I'm selfish in that regard, and I don't care. Stephen Curry deserves it. He is a player who, when we look back in history, in my opinion, should have 5 rings, not 4. That's just me. And but I do want that tattoo. I absolutely want it. So, Sophia, travel safe. And I'll see you in a week. Monday night, you and I, game 4, Warriors and Rockets. We might be doing a post-game sweep episode. It also might be 2-2. Who knows? You shall see. But stay tuned. You can follow Sophia Jones on Twitter at SophiaJones_2. You can follow me again at Surf Journalist and all that stuff. You know how to find us. I think we're done. Are we? We're good? We're finished? Bye-bye. Oh, sorry, I didn't get